We're going to be in Exodus 33. Exodus 33. And Cody is so good at what he does that by the end of this lesson you'll recognize one of the songs that he just led. So we're on the same page. I was working on my notes this afternoon and added some notes from the song that we sang, the very first song tonight. And so that will show up at the end of the lesson tonight. Do you remember the Lord's offer to destroy all of Israel and to start over with Moses? Talked about it last week. I misspoke. I gave it some more thought during the week, and I don't think it would have been a break in God's promise to Abraham to have done what he was suggesting to do, since Moses was part of the Abraham's line. So if the rest of Abraham's line goes away and he restarts with Moses, he's still working with the seed of Abraham. So it would have been possible for him to undo and redo in that way without completely turning aside from the promise he had made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But Moses kind of took it the same way we did, that for God to be fully keeping his promise, then he would fully keep Israel, and that's what God eventually decided to do. Now, God is still angry, and as I thought about that word, I wondered if a better word was disappointed. You know, that was just about as bad when Mama would say, "No, I'm not really mad at you, I'm just disappointed." It may be that God is saying in this passage that we'll look at tonight that he was disappointed with his people, but he offers another possibility. So we're past that. I'm just going to wipe them all out and start over with Moses, but he does give a second possibility of how he wants to handle the situation, starting in chapter 33 and verse 1. So the Lord said to Moses, "Leave this place, you and the people you brought up out of Egypt, and go up to the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying I will give it to your descendants." So we're keeping our promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're giving the land to their descendants. But notice verse 2. "I will send an angel before you and drive out the Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Go up to the land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go with you, because you are a stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way." Right? So he says, I'm not going to destroy you now, but the best way for me to keep from destroying you next week is if I just don't go with you. I'll send an angel as a guide to take you where you need to go, but our relationship is not going to be the same anymore. I'm going to send you with the angel, and I am not going to go with you. But when the people heard these distressing words, they began to mourn, and no one put on any ornaments. Now hang on to that thought. No one put on any ornaments, so they took off their jewelry. What did they do last time they took off their jewelry? They made a golden calf out of it. Okay, so you've got the gist of what's going on here. They said to Moses, or God said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, you are a stiff-necked people. If I were to go with you even for a moment, I might destroy you. Now take off your ornaments, and I will decide what to do with you." So the Israelites stripped off their ornaments at Mount Horeb. Why do you think they did that? The first time they did it was to make a false god. This time was to say to God, we don't need these. Right? They got us into trouble. This was the problem for us. So not having them is better than having them. My friend Kelly McCoy taught a couple of weeks ago on Gideon. You know, Gideon won a great battle, and when he got finished with the battle, they wanted to make him king. And he said, "I don't want to be your king. Tell you what, let's do. Bring me some of the things that you won in the battle." And they made a golden ephod, a golden apron. And they put it in Gideon's hometown, and the people worshipped this golden ephod, right, which proves that Israelites would worship anything. But it became a stumbling block to them because they had some things that the Lord allowed them to win, but they got so tied up in the stuff that they won that they forgot about the God who gave it to them. So here at Mount Horeb, the holy mountain, the mount that we sometimes call Sinai, they took off all of this jewelry and became a plainer people. All right? Let's keep going. Verse 7. Now Moses used to take a tent and pitch it outside the camp some distance away, and they called it the tent of meeting. Anyone inquiring of the Lord would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. But whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people rose and stood at the entrances to their tents, watching Moses until he entered the tent. As Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the entrance, as long as the Lord was speaking with Moses. Whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance to the tent, they all stood and worshipped, each at the entrance to their tent. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face, as one speaks to a friend. And we're going to find another passage later, not tonight, but later, where God brings this up. Aaron and Miriam are going to challenge Moses' leadership. And God says, I talk to Moses face to face. Everybody else gets dreams and visions. I speak with Moses face to face. Then Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide Joshua, the son of Nun, did not leave the tent. The tent of meeting seems to have been the preceding place of meeting with God before the tabernacle. Once they build the tabernacle, you have the holy place, and the Spirit of God, the presence of God, is seen to be in the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle. But all the people would watch as Moses would go out to this tent of meeting, and anyone who had a question would go ask Moses. But none of these people who are asking questions get to be in the presence of God. Nobody's getting to hang around when the pillar comes down and when God's presence is there at the temple. But did you notice that they would stand in the doors of their tents and worship toward the tent of meeting? There's good and bad in that. We still have people who are very interested in seeing something to worship, right? We've made a golden calf. We got rid of that. But now we wait, and when the pillar comes down and we go, okay, that's the presence of God, then they would worship kind of toward the tent of meeting, toward the pillar. So they still have that compulsion to want to see something toward which they can project their worship. And then you get a surprise ending. I think all of chapter 33 is important as far as Moses' reputation. Right? Moses speaks with God and God listens to Moses. Moses judges the people. He meets with God in the tent of meeting, and God speaks with him face to face as with a friend. And we're going to find out toward the end of the chapter that there's a clause to that. It's not as if God and Moses were actually looking at each other face to face. That would have been catastrophic for Moses. But all of those things point to Moses' leadership and to Moses' place of authority. When you get to the end of that section, it says Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide Joshua, the son of Nun, did not leave the tent. So Joshua seems to be staying out there taking care of the premises all the time. Where was Joshua when the presence of God was there? Unless he was sneaking out the back door, Joshua was somewhere close by. When we were looking at Moses coming down from getting the law, and as they're coming down the mountain, getting closer, Joshua says, well, it sounds like the sound of battle. And Moses says, no, it's not the sound of battle. It's not the sound of victory. It's the sound of partying. It's the sound of dancing. It's the sound of music. So Joshua was with Moses to some extent, even on the mountain. So there is at least occasionally an extra little push toward Joshua's leadership. It won't come to its fulfillment for another 40 years or so. But when it's time for Joshua to take over, he is the obvious heir apparent. There are other people that try to bring themselves up, and we'll talk about Korah and some of his folks, but Joshua's the guy, and he has these experiences that no one else in the camp has. Everybody else is standing in the tent, the doorway to their tents, looking from over here, and Joshua is somewhere in that near vicinity with Moses and the Lord. So keep in mind that Joshua is already, he's not part of the leadership, but he's already being pointed in that direction. And then we get to that neat passage toward the end of chapter 33. And this has to do with that song that Fanny Crosby wrote back in 1890. Have you ever looked at when our songs were written in our songbook? We have a lot of songs that were written pre-split between Churches of Christ and Christian churches. That took place about 1900. Prior to that, these songs were already being written. So we have a long, long history of hymns. A lot of the hymns in our songbook are 130, 140 years old, and just as amazing now as they were then. When people come and visit with us that aren't used to a cappella singing, and they hear these songs, some of them are, Fanny Crosby is sung all over Christendom, with music and without, but when they hear these songs sung a cappella, they are almost always impressed with that kind of four-part harmony and the words and the feelings that Fanny Crosby brought out. But anyway, the line is, "He hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock, that shadows a dry, thirsty land. He hideth my life in the depths of his love and covers me there with his hand," right? And we've sung it a million times. Well, here's the passage from which Fanny brought that song. Beginning in verse 12. Moses said to the Lord, "You've been telling me to lead these people, but you've not yet let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways, so that I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people." The Lord replied, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." And wouldn't that be great to hear if you're Moses? You're just trying to figure out, God hasn't even told you yet which angel, right? I'm not going with you. I'm just going to send an angel. And Moses said, you need to tell me who's going to guide us. You need to tell me how things are going to go. But what I really, really want is for you to stay with me so that I can learn from you, so that I can know your ways. And the Lord replies, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." So then Moses said to him, "If your presence does not go with us, then don't send us. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth?" And the Lord said to Moses, "I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name." Isn't that a neat? I mean, we're not talking about a casual relationship. We're not even talking about the idea that God basically knows who each one of us is, right? He knows us. He knows who we are. This is God and Moses meeting in the tent of meeting face to face, talking to each other, and Moses having an influence in the way things turn out. God listening to Moses and then giving Moses good things in return, and then saying to Moses, "I know you by name." We are, you hate to use the word friend, but they met and talked as friends meet and talk. I know you, I'm pleased with you, and I know your name. Moses brings up the same kind of argument that he did before. There are lots of people watching us, God, and this needs to be successful. Right? If we leave and you don't go with us, and we fail, what are all of these neighboring nations going to say about our God? He brought them up out of Egypt to let them die in the desert. The same thing that the people were saying those first few weeks. Why didn't you just let us die in Egypt? We had plenty to eat in Egypt. Now we're starving to death. We had plenty to drink in Egypt. Now we don't have any water. All the complaining that they did will be true if you don't go with us. God decides that he will because Moses asked him to. That's an amazing passage. So Moses says, I need one more thing. We're doing good so far. Let me ask one more favor. Moses said, now show me your glory. The Lord said, I will cause all of my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. Now, the name of the Lord, remember, don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. The name of the Lord was precious, and people would not speak it. God said, I'm going to speak my name in your presence. This is capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, which is a representation of that covenant name of God. It was mistranslated in the King James and in some other translations as Jehovah. It's difficult to pronounce in the English, probably Yahweh. It's YHWH, sometimes referred to as the Tetragrammaton, the four letters. In Hebrew, there were no vowels. It was just a string of consonants. Right? So when you have YHWH, what you put in between them is what's up for grabs, what the name actually would have been. It was translated as Jehovah, which is close, and Yahweh, which probably is closer. But Moses says, I want you to show me your glory. And God says, I'm going to show you all of my glory. I'm going to proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But, he said, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. And so that tenures a little bit what we were talking about at the tent. They spoke as face to face. They spoke as friends would speak, but not necessarily that Moses was able to see the very face of God in all of his splendor. Then the Lord said, there's a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. To be in the presence of the creator of the universe, even to just see him leaving, just to see the back of God as he goes away. What a gift. So Moses, the Israelites, the Jews later on, they were 100% right to love this guy. They were 100% right to celebrate Moses and his life. All right? But let's run over to Hebrews. And I didn't write it down, so I'm going to have to find it really quick. Should be about chapter 2, I think. I could just tell you what it says and you could find it. He talks about how Moses was such a tremendous leader in his time. He was a great leader in the house of God. And then he says, but Jesus was the builder of the house. Right? And he says the servant, meaning Moses, doesn't stay in the house forever, but the son remains in the house forever. So, comparing Jesus to Moses, it is chapter 3? Well, I like being right. Where in chapter 3?
Right at the very beginning.
Right at the very beginning? Okay. Let's just start in chapter 3, verse 1. Therefore, holy brothers and sisters who share in the heavenly calling, fix your thoughts on Jesus, whom we acknowledge as our apostle and high priest. I did some writing recently on that. The whole idea of Jesus as an apostle is amazing. He was faithful to the one who appointed him, just like Moses was faithful in all of God's house. Jesus has been found worthy of greater honor than Moses, just as the builder of a house is greater honor than the house itself. Every house is built by someone, but God is the builder of everything. Moses was faithful as a servant in all of God's house, bearing witness to what would be spoken by God in the future. But Christ is faithful as the Son over God's house, and we are his house, if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. So he kind of mixes his metaphors. At one point, Moses is the house, and at another point, he's the servant in the house. But Jesus is the Son. He's the owner. He's the builder. He's the one who perfects the house. So Moses was great during his time frame. But what the Israelites needed to understand in the first century was that someone even greater than Moses is now here. So as much as they loved Moses and as much as they celebrated Moses, they needed to love and to celebrate Messiah even that much more. So a tremendous passage. Exodus 33 is just full of good stuff. So we'll say goodbye to you guys. We'll talk to you later.